All right, thank you for staying with Newsnight. The conversation begins right now. We're calling it Education Which Way Roadmap. We'd like to hear from you at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Newsnight. You can also text in 22422. Let us know where you're texting from and include your name as well. My guest already with me in studio, Indimuli Kahi, Chief Principal, Machakos School and Kenya Secondary School Heads Association Chairperson. Thank you for making time. Thank you. Kennedy Echesa is also here, an education expert and also advocate of the law. Asante sana for making time.
Thank you.
And also Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, Executive Director, Usawa Agenda. Thank you so much for making time. Yeah. Indibuli, I'll start with you on this. With the resumption of the normal term dates,
yep,
is the ministry back to the 50-30-20 capitation plan?
Thank you very much, Trevor. We've resumed after the COVID-19, and we are back to the long 14 weeks of second term, 10 weeks of 11 weeks of first term, and 9 weeks in third term. But the funding is yet to go back to 50-30-20. We are still dealing with the quota disbursement. We are expecting the last quarter to come. We were expecting that it would be in as the schools opened, but it's yet to come.
Yeah.
But we've been talking to the Ministry of Education. Personally, as a chair, I've addressed this with the CS, with the PS, that we need to get back to the 50-30-20 funding model that we've been having, because first term really carries a lot. That is when all the planning is done that requires finances. That is the time we have a lot of activities. You've just seen we've come from drama, National Drama Festival, National Science and Engineering Fair, National Term 1 Games, and these are very heavy spending activities.
Yeah.
And this term too, we have activities that are equally heavy.
Yeah.
We have music festivals coming in. We are having Term 2 ball games coming in. Leave alone the teaching and learning programs that are there,
yeah,
in order to ensure that the curriculum is implemented.
But isn't this where the problem is? Because your fellow head teachers, who you're their chairperson,
yes,
are saying that the schools are literally grinding to a halt. They've opened the schools, they don't have capitation fund, they can't pay the BOM teachers. What is the way forward then? That
is true. The funds are not enough, and they are not coming on time. And we should remember that fees was capped somewhere in 2014 during the Kilemi Mwiria tax force. And during that time, we were buying maize at 1,400 shillings. Today, maize is going at 7,000. We were buying beans at 4,300. Today, beans is we are buying beans between 16,000 to 18,000 per 90 kg bag, depending in the area in which you are. So you find that those proposals, as were envisaged by the Kilemi Mwiria, down the line, they have been overtaken by events. So it is important that as a nation, we must sit down, yeah, and look at the costs of running these schools, yeah, so that the principals really are not bearing the brunt, okay, when things are not moving. By the time we were coming up the Kilemi Mwiria report, the staffing in our schools, yeah, was not in that critical stage that we are in now. Okay. Remember 2014 and this is 2023. Those are almost 10 years yeah, down the line. Mm-hmm. So we are paying BOM teachers, and you have to pay them well in order to stick into your school, otherwise they'll move to another school. Mm-hmm. Funding from parents is equally not coming in on time, and you do not have that liberty of just sending the children home. to go to their parents and get the money they are supposed to get, especially those in boarding schools.
Okay.
While there has been some argument that those in boarding schools get fees and they can use it to manage some aspects of teaching and learning, far from it. We are not getting it as quickly as it should from the parents, because they too have challenges they are facing. Now look at our schools that are day schools, that are entirely relying on government capitation. They do not have, parents are not supposed to pay anything there, so they have to wait. And when the capitation delays, or it is not enough, such schools and principals in those schools are having it rough.
Okay. Echesa, isn't this where the problem is? They say that the devil is in the detail. The money is not enough. It comes late. Head teachers are not allowed to send the students home. They can't pay the BOM teachers. Is it the government has failed, or is it a matter of not prioritizing the education sector?
I think it is both. Trevor, government has failed to meet its constitutional requirement of funding basic education in Kenya, and there is no general goodwill from government. Chair of Echesa is here with us. Government, through the Ministry of Education, made a commitment in term 1 that since we had normalized our education calendar year of 14 weeks, 12 and 9, they're going to go back to the old model of funding, which was 50, 30, 20. Because term 1 was the longest term, we were expecting that government will send 50% of capitation. Somewhere in January, government released only 25%, and this is what teachers and principals have been surviving on to run schools. Which means most schools, as they await the capitation for second term, they are living on debts. Government, through the ministry, made a commitment that by 3rd of May this year, they will have released the capitation for second term. And a functional government will release 25% that they owe schools in term 1, plus the 30% of term 2 to bring it to 55%. So schools were expecting 55% release of capitation funds on 3rd of May. That was not with forthcoming, Trevor. Instead, what the ministry has done is to shut down the NEMIS, so that principals cannot access NEMIS, they cannot put details on NEMIS, and send some forms to schools so that principals can fill the forms requiring the details of students, information the ministry already has. In this digital era, why should the ministry send a form manually through the directors that the principals fill? And when you look at those forms, they are saying that they should be returned by 26th of May. After the return on 26th of May, they will begin the verification process. And up to June, they may not have sent the capitation. The question is, why is the ministry using these delaying tactics of requiring information they already have for them to release the funds? A school has 3 accounts. We have the tuition account, we have the operation account, and we have the school fund account. Tuition account, since money has not been sent from January to date, it has nothing. As we open schools, teachers cannot even access chalks to use for teaching. They cannot buy basic tuition requirements like chemicals for laboratories, so teaching cannot proceed. As we open school, the operations account have no money. BOM teachers have not been paid. In some schools, from March, they have not been paid because the 25% that was released was only able to pay up to March. And on the school fund, it is from parents. The high cost of living, the increased taxation. Parents are also broke. They are not paying fees. We call upon government to effectively fund basic education by releasing funds, 1, in good time and in the required measure. It is a constitutional obligation. We do not have to beg government, and the chair, Echesa, must be at the forefront of calling on government to pay money, to release funds, or it should mobilize principals not to go to school. Shut down the schools. Because some of these principals actually are getting hypertension, pressure. Some of them are selling their properties to fund day schools without any assurance that they'll get back the money.
Manyasa, what would be the long-lasting solution to this? Because it seems the government is not able to pay, and we've seen there's also an issue paying salaries, including salaries that have been delaying. So what would be the best solution to such a situation? Scrap off the free primary education, let the parents take on the burden? What would be the best outcome?
I don't think we can talk about scrapping the free primary education. For one reason, it is a constitutional right of every child to get basic education. But secondly, free primary education is politically very popular. So there is no elected government in Kenya that is going to say, let us scrap it, because of the political ramifications. So from where I sit, I think, government needs to sit down and do a rationalization process and say, what is it that we have promised to undertake that we are not able to undertake? And be very open with Kenyans and tell Kenyans, we promised that we shall pay tuition fees for every child in secondary school up to this amount.
Yeah.
This is what we are able to do, and this is what we are not able to do. If government was very transparent with the people of Kenya, Kenyans can actually agree to cost share, so that we do not put our schools in a state of dysfunction by making dictums that are unimplementable. Because that is the challenge that people who run schools in this country now face. That you find yourself in a school with so many children, you have been told don't send them away. Truth is, principals are sending children away. That is not a secret. Children are being sent away. But even when they are being sent away, to where are they being sent? To the homes of parents who are unable to even put a meal on the table. So these children, when they are sent home, they don't come back to school, some of them, and some will stay there for a week or two and come back without fees. So I think that we need a rationalization process that weeds out expenses that are unnecessary, commitments that we don't need to make, expenditures within government that government does not need to commit to. I am trained in economics. When you go to an economics class, they teach you the concept of the time value of money. A shilling today is worth more than a shilling tomorrow. So if someone is supposed to give you money and they delay with it, they basically devalue that money. By the time you're getting it, its worth has diminished. That is what is happening in schools, that head teachers and principals are not getting money on time. By the time they get the money, that money has diminished in value. Two, that money comes last minute. Last term, for those in junior secondary school, was sent money during the last week of the term. What that does is to force these administrators to enter into rushed procurement processes that don't deliver value for the money that they are going to spend. If you go to the bank and borrow, you will repay with interest, and that interest has not been factored into the capitation that you're going to receive. So I think that we need to rationalize. For me, that is the bottom line. Agree on what can be done, what can't be done, and agree as a country, how do we deal with the gaps that exist.
In Dimuli, I'm holding a letter to the county directors of education here, titled Implementation of the Free Day Secondary Education, that is the FDAC. They're saying that all school heads are now supposed to update their data on schools on this program. They're supposed to, the application, they need to fill afresh the application form for the FDAC program, and the application needs to get to the ministry by the 26th of May. Most of your school heads are saying this is another delay tactic for giving them capitation, because if they're supposed to fill them afresh, and the deadline is 26th of May, already they shall have done about a month in. And then now there's the checking and the verification. Is this necessary, or is it a delay tactic?
First, let me just respond to some discussion earlier from my friend. Yes, we were expecting 50% in term one. When I followed up, I was reminded that we are doing a financial year that ends in June. and therefore the term was coming at towards the tail end of the financial year. So we just received the third quarter of what we were supposed to get within that financial year. We are expecting a fourth quarter. Of course, that funding model really destabilized the schools because of what I had already explained. So the reason why we didn't get and we were expecting was because of that quarterly disbursement. Now, coming to your question, yes, we have seen that circular. I have a copy with me. We also have a form to be filled. Is it necessary at this point? The answer is yes and no. I'll start with the no part. It's not necessary because of the fears that we already have out there. Our fear is what you said, that this may delay the capitation by June, and maybe we end up getting somewhere towards the end of June. And remember, as I've said, there are so many activities we are in. So that's why I would say it is not right. We should have just been released the 25% of the quarter. We begin, as we try to say, in the new financial year, now that we are in second term, can we get the 30%, then 20%, then when we start term one next year, we get the 50%, so that we have that spread within the financial year, the way government would operate. Yes, it is necessary, because we have raised several issues on funding. The ministry and government have been funding based on what we have uploaded on NEMIS. And many times you are not able to get all the children on NEMIS, because to get a child on NEMIS, we are going to use a birth certificate. Majority of these birth certificates are fake. Those numbers you try to fix in, the system does not take. So you find you have 500 Form 1s, for example, whom you are trying to get into the system, but you are only able to get 400 of them. 100, their birth certificate numbers are not authentic. You also had the same in Form 2, Form 3, Form 4. So you find that out of 2,000 students that you have, maybe government is not funding you 400 because they are not on NEMIS. So yes, it is good to get the manual input from us so that we can verify, and government can come and verify the numbers we are talking about, that I have 400 Form 4s. The system NEMIS is talking about 300 Form 4s, but physically I have 400. Then the county directors, the quality assurance officers should come and check. This has never been done. So we cry capitation is coming late. We're crying it's not enough because many students are not being captured. Yeah. And that is why we want all students. If NEMIS is being used, let all students be captured. Okay. And if birth certificates are not working, then we must look for another alternative way in which we can get all students captured. Yeah. Why can't we use the parents' ID numbers? Okay. Because this will not change, or the guardian's ID numbers, yeah, so that they are recorded at KCPE level, at primary. We use them in secondary, and that UPI number can be used throughout. Yeah. But you see, we keep generating new UPI numbers. When they leave primary, they come to secondary, another UPI number is generated. And if a birth certificate cannot be fed, it is not easy to generate a UPI number. Yeah,
it Trevor, I don't think we should buy what Mwalimu is selling to Kenyans. Okay. Birth certificates cannot be used at KCP level legitimately, and these birth certificates becomes fake when they come to Form 1 and subsequently to Form 2s.
But you see, it's the system that doesn't pick it. So either it's a problem.
The system cannot tag them as being fake. You know you can't sit KCSE without a birth certificate. So at what level do these birth certificates become fake?
So
they only become fake when government has to commit to their funding. It's a purely delaying tactic. In fact, they attempted this game with the junior secondary and they succeeded. They generated a number called UIC, Unique Identification Code, by the ministry and issued every school. After issuing every school, at the time of funding, they only funded by end of term 1 about 30% of junior secondary schools. 70% were not funded, and the ministry wrote to directors and the head teachers telling them that they did not supply it with UIC. They were wondering, how would we supply you with the number you generated for us? Having succeeded not to fund 70% of junior secondary schools, they now come to senior secondary schools and say that students have fake birth certificates. Why can't government even demonstrate goodwill by funding those with the so-called good birth certificates, those who are already in the system? And where do our students go? Even a simple transfer, Trevor, it has to be done through the Ministry of Education, and the county directors must be informed. So the government is aware of the students' movements. Those who die, they are removed from the system. But today, as we speak, ask the chair if he is able to access the NEMIS. The ministry has intentionally and purposely shut down NEMIS so that the principals cannot access information and feed information. Why are we going to where we were and it was not working? The reason why there was digitalization of records is because principals were assumed to be adding ghost students onto their programs for their benefits and pilferage of public funds. So NEMIS came in to stop this issue of funding ghost students. At least will come all the way from Habondi with names that don't exist. And when money goes to the accounts, it was said principals will withdraw. So with NEMIS, it was difficult for principals to do such play games. But today, the government is telling us NEMIS is not working. So have records of students from Busia, handwrite them manually, give us your number, we shall send the money. Even fools will see that this is a scam by government. It's a delaying tactic. And we shouldn't buy this idea that we need NEMIS has failed.
But Dr. Manyasa, for the record purposes of keeping records, what is wrong with uploading a fresh record of how many students you actually have? Because it might cure what Indimuli is saying, that your students, you have few of them are being funded than the ones that you actually have, considering there was also the 100% transition that came.
I think that our biggest problem is a deficit of trust. So there is mistrust around, mistrust on the part of the principals towards government, thinking government is trying to play games with funding and therefore delay funding. There is mistrust on the part of some people in government on the principals. They think principals are failing NEMIS so that they don't account for the full number and actual number of learners in their schools. So that mistrust is what is breeding the problems. But I think that what we are facing right now has nothing to do with that mistrust. What we are facing right now is what happened to the public servants. Their salaries delayed. So we need to say there is a problem of resources within government right now. And if we agree that there are those challenges, agree that education is one of the things that cannot wait. It needs to be prioritized. We have challenges of cash flow within government, but education is one of those things that cannot wait because children are growing every day, and if they fail to learn at a particular age, they will fail to learn completely, and you have a very long time with them as citizens of the country who are never prepared to be responsible citizens. So if we agree to that, then for me it is, let's get back to government and ask, what is it that we need to do to make our schools work? If we have principals that we don't trust, why have we even allowed them to be principals? Get them out of their positions and put there someone else who is trustworthy, who will give you a list that you can trust from the onset,
like,
and you don't have to go, and you don't have to go through 10, 11 steps of verification,
Yes.
because those steps of verification are time-consuming and resource-consuming, and impose constraints on effective running of schools.
Okay.
So for me, that is important. The critical issue is this, that we have children in school without the means for them to be in school meaningfully, to learn, to have what they need to be in school. Away from even the challenges that we are facing with funding of schools, last term, Teacher Service Commission posted teachers to junior secondary school. That process was the most shambolic, I think, that has ever been undertaken in our education sector. We have schools that have 2 streams of junior secondary. They have been given 2 teachers. Both of those teachers have the same specialization. So you have a school with 120 or 10 children or 100. You have been given 2 CRE and English teachers, or 2 Kiswahili and geography teacher. What happened? How did we end up with that? And how soon can we remedy that? Because as I speak, I am not speaking because I want to be heard, but I want a remedy on that. You can't take children to junior secondary. You have 14 learning areas and give them 2 teachers who are both specialists in the same area, meaning that the other areas they will not be taught. As we speak, most of junior secondary have received 1 or 2 teachers who are interns. If you have understood CBC, the most critical stage is this one of junior secondary. We can't expect interns hired for 1 year, they have gone already without pay for some time, to be the ones who are going to guide learners through that most critical stage of their academic development. So that needs to change for me. And I think that we are Kenyans, and Kenyans like to offer simplistic solutions to complex problems. But I think...
Like go back to 844.
Yeah, go back to 844. do this other thing. I think it is a moment for us to sit down and realize that we are putting the future of this country in jeopardy, and focus on solutions that can work. If we need to suspend construction of anything else in the country until we have funded and sorted out the mess in education, we need to do it now. Because education has one problem about it. If you allow mediocrity to entrench, it will reproduce itself to unmanageable levels. So I feel pained as someone who has been in this sector for a long time, that we are sitting and watching our education sector rot. It is basically rotting under our watch. And yet there are very many practical solutions that we can undertake. There's shortage of funds. There isn't shortage of funds in the country. The shortage is what has been allocated to education. And the timeliness of disbursement.
Let's involve the people here on this conversation, and I see quite a lot of feedback coming through. NEMIS is working. I have just logged in now. That is from Stephen. Kennedy Echesa is wrong. I am a teacher dealing with NEMIS. The system rejects birth certificates. Sometimes it changes from 1s to Form 3 and 2 to Form 4. It's chaotic. That is from Mr. Wandera Isaac. Sishangi, a teacher UPI generation is difficult because of fake birth certificates. You can register for KCSE without a birth certificate. Please ask Indimuli Kahi, on whose side is he? He seems to be defending the ministry instead of fellow principals. On whose behalf is he there? This is a concerned principal. The government and stakeholders failed a long time ago. We parents said don't rush to this system, but nobody listened to us. Msiba wa kujitakia, wambiwi pole. This is Kiruma Charles, Kivagala in Vihiga County. JSS students are still paying tuition fee in the name of feeding. Now pupils are being sent home because of this and also are made to miss their lunch. What is this? We are told it is the counties directing schools to do this. Concerned parent. Another person here says, principals are some of the most selfish and inconsiderate public workers. They complain about lack of funds in schools, but the moment when the funds are disbursed, the first thing they do is send money to their associations for useless conferences. That's a concerned parent. Let's answer this first principal who says, on whose side are you on?
I think if he's a principal, then he's not listening to my talk and is therefore not in touch with what is happening. I've made it very clear that principals have challenges in NEMIS. And it has been backed up by one of the teachers from somewhere who handles NEMIS. I've said the certificates, birth certificates don't work, right? Now, I responded to the form that is to be filled, and I said in two ways.
Yeah.
No, we don't like it at this time because we feel that it is going to delay disbursement. But yes, because we will now be able to capture all the children that we have in school that are not captured on NEMIS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how he has seen that to be backing government.
In the deliberations with the government, do you have a semblance of when the capitation will be disbursed or no?
Yes. As a chair, I must say I keep asking government. Of course, director, secondary, PS, even CS. Most recent, there was a national principals conference, and this was equally raised there. And the ministry made it clear. And even yesterday, I had a talk with the director secondary on when is capitation coming. And he said, as a ministry, they have already prepared the paperwork that is required for the release of the fourth quarter, the 25% that we are waiting. They have done everything, sent it to Treasury. They are simply waiting for Treasury to release the funds. That is the answer I was given. And I promptly communicated it to my county chairpersons, you see.
So they don't know, basically.
Yeah, pardon?
They don't know when the capitation funding will come.
It will depend on when Treasury will release.
Okay.
Two, I don't think my colleague is fair to say that I'm not defending them. Number three, somebody has mentioned there that immediately we get the money we pay to associations for very useless conferences. I think that is an irresponsible statement. Because through those conferences, there is a lot that inform the education sector. It is through those conferences that we are able to bring out the challenges that will inform policy changes. It is through those conferences that we even show where the parents are feeling the pain. It is, and I've said it before, and I would like to say it again. When somebody feels things are not working, the easiest target is the principal. When you feel books are not enough in school, begin by saying the principals are not buying these books, and therefore we will provide them. So we provide the textbooks. There is no money in the tuition account to be able to now buy chemicals for the lab, to be able to ensure that we are improving on the ICT integration in the school, because all those should be funded through tuition. So it is a narrative that has been played daily until an ordinary person feels that when the principals go for the conferences, they are useless. All professions hold conferences.
Okay.
And in these conferences, information is given, is passed.
And it is important information.
My good friend Wakili here had earlier said that Kenyans should not buy my version that the birth certificates are fake. I think I was very quickly vindicated by one of the teachers.
Yeah.
The truth is, you can register for KCPE and enter any number and the child will be registered. When they bring those certificates at secondary school and we use those birth certificates, inakataa. But there is a period of 4 years in which the parent can now look for the correct birth certificate, and at the time we are registering for KCSE, they have an authentic paper which we now use to.
So essentially, it's the systems that are not amalgamated because initially
issues the birth certificates.
But that's the other thing, Echesa, because you see, it's a system.
Not principles.
Because
issues
don't issue.
Even if the government
but
that
still,
is issuing fake birth certificates.
But I see a problem with the systems here, because once it's entered at KCP level, that same system should be at the KCSE. Why then do you have to re-enter? So it's a systems problem.
Government should not take advantage of the system to actually delay funding of secondary education. It is the government that issues the so-called fake certificates. Why should it issue fake certificates? And how many parents have you arrested as principals for coming with? Because it's a criminal matter. So, but again, Kahi, I wanted Kahi to respond to this, just speaking on behalf of a few principals.
Yes.
When you are told that they will not give 50% in term 1 because this is a different financial year, does it mean that for the 3 terms in 2023, government will just fund 75% of their commitment to funding free secondary education? Number 2, now that you are not aware as the principal number 1 of when the funds will be sent, what is the way forward? Are you going to ask your colleagues to shut down schools? Are they going to survive on air? How are they going to run schools without funds that you do not know when they are going to come?
In fact, that is the conversation that Manyasa was saying, that we need to have a conversation on rationalizing what can be funded and what cannot be funded. Right, Manyasa?
I think it would be fair to Mwalimu Kahi. If you went to Treasury, you went to the ministry, because that is the farthest that
I can go.
That he can go, is to go to the Ministry of Education, and they told you, here is the paperwork we prepared. We are waiting for disbursement from Treasury. That is just that. There's
nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do, because there is nothing a tool at your disposal to force money out of Treasury. So I think that, to be fair to Mwalimu, he has done
his best.
And we need to now ask the key question: what are we prioritizing? Are we prioritizing these expenses that we have seen coming out, or so much is being spent by Office of the President on cheese and whatever? Or are we prioritizing taking children to school? We have put billions in Hustler Fund. Is it our aspiration as Kenya to create hustlers? I think that is an important question, because we seem to be prioritizing that. Is it our aspiration as Kenya to become a hustler nation and create hustlers and encourage these young people who are being sent away from school every day for lack of fees to find a hustle? Is that the direction we are pointing them? If that is not our priority, then let us put money in schools now. And where we have limitations, let us be transparent with every Kenyan parent and tell them, in the interest of us thinking as a nation, we have this limitation, how much can parents put in? I know that there is poverty in our country, but I also know that there's no one who is too poor to give anything. Parents can bring firewood to the school. I have a friend, their family is very prominent. They are my seniors. Their father supplied vegetable to the school where they went throughout their school time. One of them was a classmate of my uncle. And my uncle used to tell me, we used to turn to this guy and say, now your father has come, he has brought vegetables. If he didn't come, we'll have eaten beans. And the guys, they are a very prominent family right now from Western. Their father supplied vegetables to Butler High School. And they went to school there. So these parents are not too poor to do anything. Can we have a framework with the support of school principals? Because again, Kahi, I mentioned earlier the issue of trust. There is also an issue of trust among some of your members. So if there is openness and a public discourse that can lead us to everyone making the best contribution they can make, we can actually get our schools to run. and run better than they're running right now. And they need to run better, because if they continue this way, we are turning this whole country into a nation of hustlers.
But Banyasa, as a country, we must always be inspired, quote unquote, to do something. Right now, the issue is government has given a direct express instruction to the principals not to send away children. So the parents don't have the inspiration to go the extra mile.
You know, let me tell you this. There is that express instruction. Part of it is ignored because it's unimplementable. Yeah, because if you tell me don't send away children and my latrines are flooding, overflowing, and you haven't given me money to build latrines, I will send away children to build latrines, because if I don't, public health officers will still come and close the school because children can't be in it. So some of those directives are ignored because they are unimplementable. But some of them are ignored because there is corruption. Let us be honest. Parents are being told, send money to this teacher, don't send to this account in our schools. And parents are sending money to teachers for things that only the schools know. Yeah? Okay. And you are told this is the designated teacher, so send this teacher the money.
Okay.
And that is happening. So, and sometimes I start to ask myself, is it that our government is weak? Is it that it knows these things and it doesn't care? Because I was in high school when it was declared, when Moi declared that fees had been capped at, it was actually 4,450. I was in Form 3. We did not pay a shilling more that year. It was renegotiated the following year because the principals were able to table facts on the table and say we need more, and it was renegotiated. Yeah. But that year, that figure was fixed.
Okay.
We haven't had any fixed figure in this country for a long time. This story they tell us that this is the fixed figure is just a story.
Okay.
If you ask parents, that is not what obtained.
Before we leave on capitation, what the principals through their chair should push is that this capitation is just on paper. When you hear that government is planning to release 25% of funds to schools, what actually reaches the school accounts is about 8% of that 25%. Because government through the ministry retains the bulk of the money. They say we have retained this for textbooks, we have retained this for, say, activity, we've retained this for trainings, semester, or something like that. Yeah. So teachers only, principals only get about 8%. But parents will be up in arms saying, government said it released 25 billion to schools, when a school in the village only had about 1 million of the so-called 25 billion. And the story with textbooks is just a cartel. I think it was a way of Jogoo House also getting business to do with books. I was surprised that I went to inspect some history books. I was looking for information, and books that have been revised by KICD are still telling children that the Attorney General is a member of the National Assembly. The last edition, 2019. That is what government is supplying to schools. Teachers of biology, most of them, are not using the KICD books because the content in those books and what teachers are supposed to teach, there's a variation. Yeah. So why should the ministry be retaining a bulk of the money to supply textbooks over time, some of them that are unnecessary? Because Form 4s who left last year left some books in school. Government will still be prioritizing to supply the same books but delay to release the funds that goes to school. Yeah. So we'll be asking the chair to lead the discussion of ensuring that if it is 25% going to schools, let it go to schools.
Okay. Indimuli, are those facts? Because I know you're dealing with it. Is it true that some of the books are outdated? Is it true that the money doesn't reach you, like mentioned?
It is very clear that when capitation is released, you will find money being retained. There is money being retained for tuition, for what he has correctly said, for purchase of textbooks, and I had earlier alluded to the fact that it has led to us not being able to equip certain aspects of tuition. You will find money retained for purposes of health insurance of students in terms of the Edu Afya, NHIF EduAfya program. Money will be retained for training of teachers in science and mathematics, SEMASE. Money will be retained for running of activities from sub-county, county level. Of course, we've raised those concerns.
So by the time it comes to you, it's a trickle.
Yeah, of course, it is not the 22,244 that is released to come. It does not reach the school.
But when
22,244 will be released,
yeah,
but there is that part that is being retained.
But when you're budgeting as a principal, what were you budgeting with? Was it the 22,400 or you're budgeting with?
Of course, you are supposed to budget with the 22,244.
But then your books won't balance.
Yes, no, they will balance because you issue receipts for that money that is retained. Yeah, we have to. Because you are given a circular.
Yeah.
In this circular, it states clearly, out of this capitation you have been given, so much has been retained for this purpose.
Isn't that concerning?
So much. But yeah, we've raised those concerns.
Yeah.
We've raised those concerns. And in fact, the reason why I was saying this is a correct time to also bring this physical form to fill,
yeah, because
the form also is capturing the textbooks that you have in particular subjects and what is the shortfall. You see that? The kind of teacher's guides that you have and what is the shortfall. So that any supply, though as Echesa we've been saying, let each school look at its own needs.
Yeah.
But from this data, then government should be able to release or supply these books based on the needs of each and every. But are they updated books to begin with? Yeah, they are. Initially, we had books that were not correct. We raised these concerns. Yeah. We even went up to Parliamentary Committee on Education, okay, during the last parliament when Mr. Meli, Honorable Meli was the chair. We raised this. We even raised the issues of oversupply of books, and it has been regulated. Yeah. Okay, books were improved on that. The only thing we were saying, the content is not as much as we expect. But as Echesa, we've raised concerns, and that is why, yeah, I agree with the generation. Okay. The only fear is it might delay the capitation. Okay. Coming to my friend Echesa, you know, sometimes Echesa will bring in from his other life. He was a teacher, and I asked him earlier why he ran away from being a teacher. And he knows why he left to get into being a lawyer. And sometimes he brings in a little bit of activism, which I like. He has challenged me that am I going to ask principals to down their tools. I want to say it is not possible because Kenya Secondary School Heads Association is not a union. Not a union, yeah. It is a professional body. We raise our issues through professional channels. Yeah. And we've done that. You see that? So I cannot come out and tell my principals because government has delayed to release capitation, yeah, shut down those schools. Okay. They will be dismissed the following day, yeah, and I will have nothing to help them. Okay. I can't help them. Now that we're still there on the issues, I'd like us to touch on one thing before we close because we're running out of time here. The junior secondary schools transition. Yes. Has it worked in your assessment? All right. A junior secondary school has its own challenges, which are quite a number. The biggest challenge in junior secondary school is the teachers. However much we may talk about classes, libraries or laboratories to be built, books to be supplied, number one is the teacher. So human. And I want to ask government to use this opportunity to employ almost 60,000 teachers just for junior secondary schools. Then we can start looking at infrastructure, we can start looking at textbooks. Though they have done, when I shared with my colleagues who are handling junior, yes, textbooks have been supplied. But who will use those textbooks to instruct the children. We have foreign language that is being taught at junior secondary school. Who will use those books to teach them, because the foreign language teachers are not there. And what Daktari said, and I agree with him 100%, this is the formative stage of the CBC. If we do not prepare these students adequately, this crisis is going to reach senior secondary in the next 2 years. And at that time, we will be unable even to identify which pathways we are going to place these children, because they would not have identified their pathways in junior secondary. So number one, we must employ teachers. That number I've suggested will surface. We should not, and this is where sometimes the policies need to change. We should not stick so much on saying that the person who should handle must be a trained teacher and therefore employed by TSC. There are other learning areas that even our universities have not yet churned out teachers for that. Issues like performing arts, the new areas of learning. But we have other people who have been trained in our universities in those areas. If we look back, maybe when I went to school, Daktari, there are times when we had untrained teachers. It's not that they were not qualified. They were qualified, but they were not trained as teachers.
They're qualified experience.
Is it easy to get them such a kind of teachers and then employ them and give them a given time to go and get the pedagogical skills? And the other learning areas that are common, the teachers are out there. Very many waiting to be employed. Can they be employed and not maybe put for 1 month as interns, the way Daktari said? Once we solve the teacher issues at JSCC, I know these others will fall in place.
Your views on JSS?
I think JSS is happening, but it is not working. One, JSS, 70% of JSS have not been funded by government. And I challenge the ministry to give us the data on the funding. That thing called unique identification code has stopped ministry from funding some of the schools. Number two, JSS is facing a problem of a demotivated working force. Again, over 60% of JSS teachers have not been paid from the time they were employed. We expect these teachers to go back to school beginning today without having been paid for 4 months. There is no provision of breakfast, lunch, or any other meal, and some of them are family persons. They are parents who require income. Number three is that the funding, even the 30% of the schools that were funded, the funding is inadequate. They were given 4,625 shillings, and it is per child. If you have 550 students as JSS, you get 263,000 to deal with in 4 months. That money is not sufficient. They do not have teachers to teach technical subjects. The TSC comes in and says we are doing what we are calling retooling for 4 days. Retooling is actually the idea of giving people the right tools to use in work. For how long will you retool a teacher of English to go and teach integrated science, or a teacher of home science to go and teach mathematics? 4 days are not sufficient for retooling. And lastly, generally, among the teachers, Trevor, we are dealing with a frustrated teaching force. I wonder what the unions are doing about this. These are teachers who are underpaid, poorly remunerated, heavily taxed. Almost every teacher, about 70%, are on loans to build homes. And then you bring the 3%, the housing loan. Whose interests are you serving? He is a chief center manager. Ask him. He was a center manager. He got up at 4 a.m. to go and pick exams for 3 weeks. Has he been paid as center manager number one? All his colleagues have not been paid. People who supervised, people who invigilated KCSE exams, today were teachers, they have not been paid. What does NEC do? Today, there is a timetable for the invigilation of 2023 KCP, KCSE, for the timetable for the exam. They're expecting the same people to faithfully and loyally go and not having been paid. So we are dealing with a very frustrated teaching force, a government that lacks goodwill support education, an education system that is in shambles, right from basic to university education, and it calls for more action than what we are dealing with today.
So, Manyasa, what is the solution now again? I come back to you with the solution. It's already happening. In the next 2 years, people are going to senior secondary. So what
I think now? Before I talk about solutions, I have two things that I have to say. One is to challenge Echesa. I am a researcher. When you throw percentages, they ought to be based on something. And I am not sure you've conducted this research. Percentages
we have records.
Should not be thrown. I am sure you don't have access to government records. so you can't tell us with precision, without research, that you know the percentage of schools that have been funded, the percentage of teachers on home loans and all that. It's not fair to the audience. Now, number two.
No, you're clear.
So the second thing that I have to mention is the fact that JSS is happening in private schools well. And that is a challenge because government developed the guidelines for JSS. Private schools adopted those guidelines. They are implementing very well. And the public sector that developed the guidelines is unable to implement. And that raises very many questions. Did we decide deliberately to fail? Or were we creating these guidelines for others and we were not serious about abiding by them? So I think that those are questions that we need to respond to. We are where we are because of failure to plan, basically. And we are in a hole. The worst thing that we can do when you are in a hole is to keep digging. We must stop digging. And we must start to say, we have children in school. For education to happen, primary things, it's a teacher. Children can learn under tree. I learned under tree class 1 up to 3. I only entered a classroom in class 4. And I am here because there were teachers who were motivated to teach me under the tree, together with some of my classmates, and many of them could be watching. Do we have that will to say we will prepare teachers for JSS? Can we be able to ask the unions, and I have to speak to my friends in the unions, to stop the bickering around whether this will be primary or secondary, because they are looking at the benefits in terms of the growth in their numbers, and focus on the fact that we have children in junior secondary, they have finished 1 term, we have 2 terms, and they will be in grade 8. And before we know it, we will be preparing for senior secondary without planning for it. At the moment, we should be planning for senior secondary, not talking about junior secondary. The plan for junior secondary should have been done and dusted, and will just be rolling out. We are in a hole. We have to stop digging. We have to understand that education is the foundation of any nation. And if we agree that it is the foundation of this nation, I want to see our parliament make a determination that this is the foundation of our nation and focus resources. The budget is coming up for debate soon. I want to see reallocation of resources to sorting out problems in our CBC implementation process. There are many problems. We need to sort them out. We need to sort those problems with the budget, but with the proper communication as well to the country. Government is, and this is not Ministry of Education. I want to vindicate the Ministry of Education a bit, but government at higher levels is miscommunicating to the public about its agenda on education. And the public is lost. The public doesn't know where to plug in and even support government in improving and solving these problems in education, because there is a lot of talk that points in all directions, and people don't know which direction to go. And that needs to end, so that we have the Ministry of Education communicating policy on education, and communicating in a way that attracts partnership to be able to start to solve the problems we have.
All right, let me bring up some of your feedback really quick and then take closing remarks from my guests. There's a lot of them coming through. Let's try and read them really quick. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Newsnight. Let's see what you're saying. Let's bring that up on screen. Babu Michael says, this issue of buying uniforms and other school necessities from the specific shops or within the school compound is still a real issue. When will the school heads or administrators stop exploiting parents by monopolizing this business? Indimuli? Is this an issue?
Thank
really
you.
Quick.
That is an issue that has always been raised, but I want to state that there are procurement procedures.
Yeah.
And many schools, and especially those that are sometimes being accused, go through procurement process. And once a supplier has won that tender, which has gone through that process, then the school can request the supplier for ease of communicating to the parents, bring it to school. You can imagine a child traveling all the way from Busia and coming, walking around in town, purchasing. He can come straight away to the school, if it is here in Nairobi, in Machakos, wherever, get the uniform there.
Okay.
Or go and buy it from that.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's bring up another one here. Vinoretta says, is there a possibility that there is going to be teachers' replacement for those who left the service through natural attrition? If so, when? All right. This is a continuous thing that is done by government every time in TSC as well. Let's move to the next one and see what you're saying. Wesonga Kevin says, is it in order to assume that the teachers' pay cut due to increased taxes has left some demoralized and may opt to engage in other income-generating activities, thus reducing their commitment to work? Okay, let's see what else you're saying here. Then I'll give my guests a chance for final remarks. Jose says, kindly, Dr. Emmanuel, tell us the way forward for teacher training colleges, capitation disbursement, since some have 7 months without paying their staff. Also, about the intake grades for the same institutions. Okay, see what else you're saying there online. And Kiplimo, Timothy, says one can't imagine that out of 14 subjects JSS are supposed to be taught, majority of schools have only received barely 3 subjects textbooks. No lab, no capitation, inadequate teachers. Our education sector is nosediving. All right. Sir Nixon says, as capitation disbursement is eagerly being waited upon, I highly hope there are no cases of ghost students who might really add some messy stress in school budgets. And Josiah DMA says, running schools is a nightmare. As a board chair of a Pondo secondary school in Nyando, it's pathetic when the government assumes that schools will run themselves without prompt funding. Someone from the government is playing gimmicks at the Ministry of Education. It's worse for small schools. That's from Josiah DMA there. Echesa, I'll start with you. Closing remarks. Where do we go from here now?
One on the percentages that I gave, I want to tell my good brother doctor, is that the government people, the ministry, including chair here, there are things they cannot say on telly because they have everything to lose. So they can only speak through some of us. So we have details and we have specific names of schools and individuals. Number 2, Trevor, as I close my remarks, is about Teacher Service Commission. Is a critical player in the provision of education in this country. But we are witnessing very strange, queer, unique, and primitive way of functioning from the Teacher Service Commission. We are departing from the fair recruitment of trained, qualified, and registered teachers. And in the recent past, we have seen members of parliament throwing employment letters like mandazis to their cronies. What message are we sending to competently trained teachers who are registered by the commission but cannot access these facilities through their members of parliament? We call upon TSC to professionalize their functions. There is a reason why TSC is an independent commission. It is not answerable to individual members of parliament.
Okay.
It is answerable to the people of Kenya.
All right, Manyasa, closing remarks.
Thank you. I think that we need to agree as a country that we are at a crossroads with our education and pause and agree collectively which way. Because as it is now, there is an attempt to sweep the problems in the sector under the carpet, and they can't be swept under the carpet. There is an attempt also for people to be hushed, especially those running schools are told, we have paid and we have paid, so you don't say you haven't received money, and that is a problem. There is a lack of interest by a lot of Kenyans in what happens in our schools, because they have taken their children away from the public schools. Some think they have taken their children to international schools. There is a lack of interest. We must understand that 90% of children in this country are in this system, and whether we like it or not, they are the future of this country, and they will impact us. Even if you be dead, they will impact you.
Yeah.
So can we come together and fix the problems? They are not insurmountable, but they cannot be fixed unless we talk together and agree that first of all there's a problem, and secondly that it urgently needs to be solved.
Okay. Indimuli?
Thank you very much. I would first start by saying that we must secure the future of this nation by ensuring that education is stable with enough funding and enough number of teachers. Number two, I would want to urge government to release the 25% capitation this month. Then when the new financial year begins and within this second term, they release the 30% that is meant for term 2, and then 20% in term 3 and 50% in term 1. And finally, time has come as Kenyans, we must sit and really discuss this issue of funding our education. Because how do we engage internationally when we are having problems in getting our own children to school? Time has come that we must find what is this that parents can be able to do. Because we should not just say government will carry everything. We as parents have also a responsibility to our children to take them to school, just like government has a responsibility to ensure that it educates its citizens. The way we are going, unless we check, we are going to have a citizenry that will have been very half-baked. And that would be a little dangerous for us.
Okay.
Across the board, beginning from primary all the way up to universities.
All right.
We need to check what is going on in the teacher training colleges. The numbers are dwindling.
Yeah.
The question we need to ask ourselves, teacher training colleges that have a capacity of almost 1,500 trainees, why are we having some with 50?
Okay.
I have evidence of that.
All right.
Why are we having some with only 200? Something is not right in the conditions that I've put for people joining the teaching service.
All right.
This needs to be looked at.
All right. Thank you so much, Indimuli Kahi, Chief Principal, Machakos School and Kenya Secondary School Heads Association Chairperson, Kennedy Echesa, Education Expert and also Advocate of the High Court, and Dr. Emmanuel Manyansa, Executive Director of Sawa Agenda. Asanteni sana for making time. And thank you all for all the feedback that you've sent through. That's the end of Newsnight. My name is Trevor Ombija. Like I mentioned, stand by. We have surprises for you coming up next week, all right? We'll see you then. Bye for now.